A few years ago, it seemed like we were getting a new anime every year about an introverted, socially anxious teen. We had Komi Can't Communicate in 2021, Bochi the Rock in 2022, and while I fell in love with both Komi and Bochi and appreciated their unique comedy-focused approaches to the topics of introversion, social anxiety, and even neurodiversity, neither of these shows, nor really any other TV or film I've seen, has approached these with the poignancy that the show Journal with a Witch does. Directed by Miyuki Oshiro, based on a manga by Tomoko Yamashita, with a score by Kensuke Ushio, the funny thing is, Journal with a Witch, or Ikoku Nikki, isn't even primarily about introversion. That's just the aspect that most speaks to me. It's about grief and loneliness. When middle school Asa's parents suddenly pass away in a traffic accident, she finds herself more shocked and confused than sad. So when her aunt Makio volunteers to become her new guardian, she tells Asa,
別に変じゃない。悲しくなる時が来たら、その時悲しめばいい。
and true to that, she doesn't even grieve for her own sister.
嘆かわしいことに、全く悲しくない。姉が嫌いだったから。
A shocking statement to hear from your aunt, but one steeped in honesty and history. When Asa moves into Makio's apartment, they quickly learn that they have quite opposite personalities. Although she is currently mourning, Asa is naturally outgoing and craves company. Makio, who is a single, work-at-home author, is a homebody, likes alone time, and gets quickly overwhelmed in social situations. One popular interpretation of her character is that she may be neurodivergent, which could be true, but I think her way of thinking is relatable to most introverts, really. And the show is both about these two characters coming to terms with Asa's parents' death, as well as being about a kid and their new guardian who are complete opposites, learning to live and grow with each other. The show is not solely about introversion versus extroversion, but because the lead characters have that dynamic, the story is always filtered through that lens and shows the challenges both personalities face. Asa lost her parents, she's alone, and because she's now the girl with the dead parents, she's treated differently too. To an extrovert like her, suddenly being isolated like this is a nightmare. Being alone isn't in and of itself bad, but for Asa, it, combined with her grief, manifests as a deep loneliness, the feeling of being lost in an endless desert. She tries to navigate herself back to civilization, but her attempts at openness, which probably worked to her advantage in the past, immediately backfire.
うちは親が来てなくて、っていうか事故で死んじゃって、おばさんと暮らしてるんだけど、小説家で忙しいからさ。自分でお勉強なら早起き大変そう。
Asa's lost. But to Makio, an introvert, aloneness is peace. It's solitude. And in some ways, freedom. It's the very air she breathes. So who better to guide Asa through her grief? This show is an excellent example of slice-of-life storytelling, where each episode tackles a particular theme and shows one or both of the characters learning or growing in relation to that theme. For example, episode 3 is about the value of long-held friendships. Episode 5 is about the confusion and frustration that results when authority figures contradict themselves. Episode 6 is about the struggles that introverts like Makio grow up with, how even as adults they get easily overwhelmed, and how storytelling serves as a refuge for many of them. And the show arguably doesn't even show its true colors until episode 7, when several of the characters, not just Makio or Asa, are revealed to be suffering from the fear of being isolated or othered due to things about themselves or their lives they can't control. That being said, Makio isn't necessarily fearful of being othered due to her introversion. I find Makio to be such an interesting example of an introvert because she is almost contradictorily very open about her introversion, partially due to her age and experience. She can come off as cold or standoffish to others, but she is very in tune about what makes her uncomfortable or anxious, and is not afraid to tell others.
お茶の一杯くらい。その一杯が長くなるから、飲みたくなったら後で自分でやります。
好きなお菓子ってあります？
お土産は遠慮とかではなく、ない方がありがたいです。めんどくさいので。
めんどくさい？
This makes her a great role model for Asa, who sometimes has trouble communicating her feelings straightforwardly. She also ends up being a valuable figure in Asa's friend's life. And it's just refreshing to see a self-aware, anxious, introverted character in a TV show who is complex, admirable, and still growing, even as an adult. After all, in the real world, nobody finishes all their learning and maturing once they graduate from high school like in anime, though some will try to pretend like they did.
大人でも傷つくんだなって。ごめんなさい。
姉さんはそういう顔を見せなかったかもしれないけど。
Makio doesn't set out to be a replacement for her niece's parents. She tells Asa from day one that she should live the way she wants to live. She takes responsibility for her well-being, but not for her upbringing. It's tragic. But Asa's mother is gone. She will have to learn how to live the rest of her life armed with only the lessons she gleaned from her mother during the first 15 years of her life. But at least she has her Aunt Makio to be her new guide, even if they don't always see eye to eye. Makio acknowledges she doesn't fully understand Asa, and that Asa may not understand her, but because they are now a family unit, they should seek to learn about and accommodate each other's needs.
ご飯は？
テーブルの上。
マキオちゃんは？
後で。ないがしろにされたと感じたなら悪かった。だから歩み寄ろ
わからないのに？
う。わからないから。
一人でご飯は嫌だ。
わかった。
That said, one thing they do share in common is their complicated feelings towards Asa's mother. From the get-go, Makio is open about her negative feelings towards her sister, but is also not willing to go into details in front of Asa.
お母さんのことを好きなままでいなさい。そのために私の主観でしかない話はしないの。
But in the wake of her mother's death, Asa is conflicted about her memory of her mother. Did they get along? Did they love each other? Was she a good mother? Did Asa even know her? Some part of Asa wants Makio, or really anyone, to confirm or contradict her doubts, but unfortunately, she will never know, and she'll have to learn to live with that.
お母さんはあなたのことが
わかんないじゃん、こんなの。嘘かもしんない。わかんないじゃん。なんだってかけるもん。わかんないじゃん。わかんないじゃん。
Asa's exterior world has gone through a seismic shift. From her perspective, she's been abandoned, and as a result, her inner world goes into overdrive, violently spinning through pain, indifference, and resentment. For an extrovert like her, it's disorienting and frustrating, especially as a child with few adults around willing to step up for her and show her the way.
ムカつく。ムカつく。ムカつく。
朝。
ムカつく。
朝。あなたは15歳の子供はこんな醜悪な場にふさわしくはない。あなたはもっと美しいものを受けるに値する。あなたを愛せるかどうかもわからない。だけど私は決してあなたを踏みにじらない。あなたの感じ方はあなただけのものだから。あなたがどう思うとそれを責める権利はない。誰にも。
この日、この人は。
それでよければ明日も明後日もずっと家に帰ってきなさい。
私の天涯孤独の運命を退けた。
Journal with Witch is not the first anime or piece of media in general to depict introverts and extroverts finding connection. There are many stories about how introverts need the guidance of extroverts to break out of their shells and be happy. But Journal with Witch is the first I've seen to flip that on its head and show how extroverts need introverts and how they can both enrich each other's lives equally. And that only scratches the surface of the themes of this show. I find its examination of grief, isolation, parenthood, navigating complicated or unfamiliar emotions, and the introvert-extrovert dynamic to be very thoughtful, poignant, and comforting. It's not going to be for everyone, but for those it will connect to, I think it has the potential on a very deep level. And I don't usually do this, but I'd also like to recommend a book for those of you who relate to Makio and her introversion, and specifically her self-doubt in relation to her introversion, or you know someone who does. And that's the book Quiet by Susan Cain, which is basically a guide for introverts to live their lives confidently and comfortably in a world that often seems to value extroverts more. This book has changed the way I think about my own introversion, so I highly recommend it, along with Journal with which is an incredible anime about introverts and extroverts learning about each other, and it's one of my favorite slice of life works in a while. Special thanks to Justin Y. Piano for lending me his cover of the Journal with Which OP, which you're hearing right now. You can find his original video in the description. Thank you for liking, subscribing, and supporting this channel with the links below. Also, thank you so much for 3,000 subscribers. Check out this playlist for my other anime-related videos. If you're specifically a fan of the anime Hibike Euphonium, I also have a whole channel dedicated to talking about that, so I'll leave it up here as well. Alright guys, thanks for watching, and have an awesome day.